Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Abundance 1010 Season 2, Episode 3. And we're so happy you're choosing to hang out with us today. We are going to dive into the topic of contentment. You
Mm,
know, Vimba and I are very much interested in what does it mean to live an abundant life, but then what does it mean to be content as well, right? And is
mhm.
there a delicate balance? Well, there is, I believe. There's a delicate balance between being contented with what you have and what your life is like versus striving for more. And so, where do we
Mhm.
draw the line between those two states of being? So, I
Yeah.
want, yeah, Vimba, go ahead. I hear you want to say something.
So I think there's a very, very fine line, as you said, a very, very, very delicate one. And I think it's very important that we have both in terms of because there's contentment and there's ambition, right? But we have to have that in a healthy balance. And so I'm looking forward to diving into this topic, Mathisa, and kind of seeing where we agree and where we may have a difference of opinion.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. And I wanted to start the discussion by sharing a biblical verse. And this is from First Timothy chapter 6, verses 6, 7, and 8. And I read, "Now godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing with these, we shall be content." So if we have food, we have clothing, we're content. We didn't come when we were born, we had nothing. We were naked, right?
Yep.
And so the fact that we're living, and if you can say you have food to eat, you have clothing to wear, that is grounds. Those are grounds for you to be content. What do you think about that, Bimbai?
Well, I like that because it's so true. And when you think about not just when we're born, us having nothing, is that when we leave this earth, we're taking nothing with us except our
That
characters,
too.
right?
Yeah, that too.
So, so I think sometimes we place emphasis and focus on things that are fleeting. It's based on the way that our world is, the way that we're wired sometimes. Because when we really boil things down to basics, our bread and water is sure, right? As children of God, bread and water is
Mhm.
sure. And then the other things that we strive to achieve, we strive to get, sometimes we may be doing that to the detriment of ourselves and our contentment,
So
which is very interesting because yes, your face is showing it all with these. So yeah, let's talk about that.
so for those who are watching us on YouTube, and remember, we're on YouTube now. So if you want to see my facial expression, check us out there. Check out that episode there. Because I'm giving a face because uh, sometimes I'm not saying I'm not content. I am, but there are times when I want more. And I was thinking about this, Vimba. I'm like, what is it? What's the more that I'm really seeking? But what it is, if I'm to pinpoint it, it's not so much, oh, I want a bigger house or I need to have two or three more cars. It's not about that. It's about me living and feeling fulfilled and feeling like I'm living out my full purpose. So when I'm striving for more, it's because I'm seeking to line up who I am and who God made me to be, like who He made me and the kind of life I'm to have. And it's not about material things.
Well, I was going to ask that because I was going to say, okay, I guess we have to make a distinction between the material and the
Yeah,
non-material things
we do.
because I think when we start to talk about more, naturally your mind may go to, oh, more things, more possessions, more money, more, and that's not true for everyone. For some people, it's true. And I even would argue that there's a healthy way to want more, possessions and more money. There's a healthy way, and I don't think there's anything entirely wrong with that in and of itself. I think what it boils down to is the reasoning behind why you want those things. So I think that the way you've explained it, that you feel like this is part of what you need to do, the more for you is falling and lining up with what you believe God has already set aside for you, right?
Yeah.
And being able to achieve those things. And there's nothing wrong with having ambition. There's
No,
nothing wrong with
of
having
course
ambition.
not. Listen, the ambition that I have, God created within me because I can't get it out of me.
Yeah.
Some people are naturally more ambitious than others. For example, not everyone can be a leader of the organization, of a company. Not everyone wants to be, but there are some people who want to be because that's their particular ambition, right? So people do have varying levels of ambition, but that lines up to their purpose.
So, you and I have had conversations about this before we came on here and decided to make it a topic for our podcast. And I think it's important for us to define what contentment is so that we have a clear understanding
Yes.
of what we mean when we're talking about contentment, because it can be very easily misunderstood to be something else, complacency.
Very true.
And so let's see, what is our definition of contentment?
Well, so when I pulled up a definition of contented, to be contented, it says it's a feeling or showing satisfaction with one's possessions, status, or situation. So you're satisfied with what you have. You're satisfied with the status you have in life and of your situation. You are contented.
So when I think of the word satisfied, it seems as though there's a lack that's there. There's a lack that's there to a degree, but you're okay with the lack. That's how I view that.
There's a lack and you are okay with the lack. That is very interesting. Yeah,
So I would
that's
prefer
interesting.
a different word for. So I would like to replace that with something different. Feeling or showing, I would actually say gratified. So to be, to appreciate and have gratitude for one's possessions, their status, or the situation. I think for me, for some reason, that word doesn't sit well with me, satisfied. So, and
That's a good point.
and it,
Those are
yeah,
good
and
points.
it could just be a me thing. I don't know, but it seems as though it's too close to complacency for me. I think
Yes.
that's what.
Yeah. Absolutely. I like the words gratify. I like the words to be grateful for and be appreciative of. I like that kind of angle with it. Yeah, because if I'm just satisfied, well, satisfied is not really where you want to be.
It's not really where you
It's
want
not
to
where you want to
be.
be.
No.
It's not where you want to be. It's just like, well, do you like your job? Well, I'm satisfied with it. It's okay.
That
It's
even sounds
okay.
terrible.
It does sound terrible. And that's why I made up my face, viewers and listeners, because yes, I am content, but I do not want that to be seen or understood as being complacent. Because I have a lot of ambitions. And I wonder, am I too ambitious? Do I have too much ambition, Lord? But Lord, you gave it to me because it's in me for years. So it came from somewhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I, you know what, I'm with you on that. And if listeners, viewers, you have viewers, they're on YouTube, and if you agree with that statement, what do you feel? Put a comment below. Let us know what you think about that, because we're not satisfied with that with
No.
that definition. We're not satisfied.
No, I am not satisfied. I do feel that I am I'm working on arriving at a place where I am contented. And I feel like in just overall in general, I think I do have I would say that I am somewhat content. I wouldn't say I'm all the way there, but I'm somewhat content with various areas of my life, because it differs in the different
Totally.
areas of my life.
Right.
So some
Right.
areas I feel more contented than I feel in others.
That is true.
Like for me now, professionally, I am feeling very unsatisfied because there's certain goals that I want to reach. There's certain things that I want to achieve, and so
Mhm.
I'm feeling that desire to strive and do better and be better at certain things. So that particular area of my life, yeah, I do feel that I feel like there's more to achieve,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I think the idea, and we look at the Bible, and we're going to touch on some references here from Paul. But I think the idea is to arrive at a place where no matter what's happening around you, you're not shifting based on your circumstances, and that you can find joy and peace in whatever situation you're in. And so I think that's the bottom line of what we need to achieve as Christians, as believers. We need to be able, we shouldn't be blowing with the wind, and just because we haven't achieved this thing, or because this circumstance changed, now we're all over the place. We need to be, steadfast and firm, and learn the discipline of being contented, whatever we face.
Absolutely. That those are some great points. I can relate with you on professionally not being fully contented in that area of my life. One day I'll share more about that. But yeah, I think it's when a lot of people tend to say, "I'll be happy when dot dot dot."
Mm,
Whatever
mhm,
that dot 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 is for you, I'll be happy when. Well, you know what? Actually, you can be happy right now. You can feel
mhm.
good now. And Paul from the good word from the Bible talks about this, and he explains his explanation of contentment. I like Paul. He's very real. He wrote in a very real way, one that we can relate to as in our human experience. I enjoy his writings. And he said in the book of Philippians, not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I'm in, I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Because the
Mm,
truth is that we are not going to be in the same situation. It's not static. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up and it goes down. But because we abide in Jesus Christ, we know how to be content with whatever situation we're in. We have that inner contentment. You know what I mean? We don't want, like
mhm,
you said, Vimba, we don't want to be blowing with the wind. Oh my gosh. Oh, I have so many bills. I am not happy. I can't be happy. Because the truth is, God's word said, this is the day, the Lord said, this is the day that I have made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. That is each and every day, regardless of our circumstances. So for
Yeah,
me,
and
go ahead.
sorry, no, no, no,
I
finish
was
your
gonna,
thought.
I was gonna say, Paul, for me, um, brought the definition of contentment. That definition sits better with me than the one I got from the dictionary.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I like
Right?
that one better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it puts things into perspective, right? And so, and here's the thing. I think what makes it such a challenge for us to be contented is that we live in a world where there's the lack of things is always emphasized, right? Like we have, we talk about it all the time. Social media, right, shows up the best parts of people's lives. And
Mm,
then, what, growing up, they would always say, um, sex sells, right? When it comes to music, movies, and just advertising and all of that media related things, sex sells. And I think something that goes along with that is negativity gets noticed, because when you look at the news, it's all the bad stuff that gets noticed. So we're constantly bombarded with the negative things, or things that agitate us, or things that would make us feel like a rise coming up. And it's like, oh, if I can get this, how do I avoid that? How do I? And so I think what we do sometimes is we can bring that negativity that's happening in the world around us into our own lives. And we look at the lack and say, oh, but this is not right. Oh, I need to get this. Oh, how about this area? And then we continue to focus on that. And then that robs us of contentment and
yeah.
looking at the wonderful and the positive things that are happening in our lives. And so I
Well,
think that's a real barrier for us when it comes to being contented, is because we live in a world that does not celebrate being content. All the ads, look at the ads.
that's true. That's
And
true.
to a certain extent, I work in part of that world, and it's all about convincing people they need this. You need this. You need this. You need this.
Mhm.
And it's so much. And so we feel like, oh, I cannot be happy, truly happy, unless I achieve whatever it is that's on your list.
That is so true. And this is why I said I like Paul, because wrote so eloquently, like just so well about just a human experience. And
Mhm.
we're not far off, Finbai, because guess what? Who was the very first person in the Bible who was discontented with what they had and they felt they needed something else? Eve. It was
Ah,
Eve.
very
Eve
early on.
in the Garden of
Yeah.
Eden, everything. I don't think our minds could even imagine and truly appreciate what it was like in the Garden of Eden. And
Yeah, good
everything.
point.
Her and Adam had everything. But then there was this one area they couldn't go to.
One.
Area. And
One.
the devil, Satan pointed that out. And she's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm now aware of my lack. I
Yeah.
have all this abundance around. But this one area I have, you brought up this area of lack for me. That was what Satan did. And
Mhm.
she participated in it. And so we are now always fighting and having to remind ourselves of what we actually have. And then
Mhm.
Satan will put, oh, you don't have that. Oh, but you're not like her. And she has this person or she has that. There we go.
Mhm.
This is why the Bible is so good, because we can see,
Practical example.
yeah, we see ourselves in this human experience that we're having, and what can be done about it.
Well, that I love that example, Matisa, because it's so true. I mean, and that's exactly what the devil is doing. He's constantly pointing out things in our lives that are not there. And I know one thing he gets me with most of the time is it's like, oh, so and so has achieved this by this whatever age it was. You've passed that age. You don't have that.
Yeah,
It's like this race. Oh my goodness, I need to get whatever, get things going and get this done, because time is moving.
yeah,
And so there's this urgency to, I need to acquire this and acquire that and acquire. But the truth is, sometimes you acquire those things that are on your list, and you realize that either A, they're not sustainable, or B, you realize that it didn't give you what you thought it was going to. It didn't give you the joy you expected that it would. So
that's
sometimes we have to be careful about those traps. Just like, I'm going to bring up the TLC group. Remember the TLC group from the 90s?
of
And they
course.
have this
Early 2000s.
song, Waterfalls.
Yeah,
Don't go chasing waterfalls. So sometimes you realize that something that you're chasing is a waterfall, and you end up nowhere.
Yeah.
You end up nowhere.
Please stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. Like
Yes, yes, exactly.
it's a good song. Still is a good song. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in North America, where I reside, for those who are not or who are just new to this podcast, there's always this idea of a starter home. Oh, okay, so this is the first time home, and the next house you get
It's the
has
dream
to
home.
be something bigger. It has
Yeah.
to be something that's not a starter home. And like, where does this um idea come from? Why can't your starter home be a home that you live in the whole time? Who said it has to be a starter home? Right? You're always having to get more and more and more. I even had someone, so my husband and I share a car, and I had someone say to me, "Oh, I thought you guys had two cars." At this point, we don't need two cars. Why? You know what I mean? So it's just every like there's this idea that you should always be like you should have more stuff, more stuff, more stuff as you get older and everything like that. You need to have more and more. And so that's not my issue. My issue, I don't need to have all of these stuff because that's just not my issue. Mind you, the money thing, that is material, but I do want money. But for me, my striving for more really comes from being more and who I am as a person and really living out the fullness of who I am, of who God created me to be.
Yeah, and I would say that's a God-given desire because it's centered on what God has placed within you, right? And
Right.
so so I would say that that's something that God gives us. He gives us ambition, an ambition to achieve. And I've seen what ambition can do for somebody. I mean, my parents grew up without much. Both of them came from homes where they didn't have much, and they didn't know they didn't have much because everyone around them lived that way too. So it's only as they grew up and grew older, like, oh, actually, this is not normal. Are we actually, And so it's the awareness that the world outside them operated in a different way, but they were happy. They had good childhoods. If you ask them today, though, they will say they had wonderful childhood, even though there was lack. But I think the thing that we also have to remember when it comes to contentment and ambition and straddling the fence between what that balance looks like, we have to remember that ambition really is what has allowed people to make those strides in life. Just going
Yeah.
back to my past example, they're living lives now that they never would have dreamed for themselves because it was so far-fetched when they were growing up in the village. But their ambition and is what got them to a lot of those places. Of course, the unsaid thing here is that God definitely guided them and God came through and opened up opportunities. But you've
Right.
got to give God something to work with. You know what I mean? Like, you have to do your part.
Exactly. Yes.
And then he does the miracles, but you do what does not require the miracle. So you do your
Right.
portion.
You do the human part of it.
Yeah. So, okay. So now that we've defined contentment, and now we've distinguished, we've distinguished the difference
I
between
think so.
contentment and
Yeah.
complacency, right?
I feel better
Okay.
about it already. I hope
Yeah,
you do
yeah.
listeners and viewers because I feel as we're talking, I'm feeling much better about it. Like, okay, all right.
Mhm. So, going back to the world that we live in and this desire or this push to get more. And I really liked how you talked about the more that you're looking for. I'm going to talk about, the more that I achieved at one point. And it was some years ago when I would say what I call my first break in writing. And I worked in journalism for a number of years. And it was, I started off at an entry point, at an entry level position. And I was a news writer. And within the first 8 months, I was promoted to staff writer. And then shortly after, a few months later down the road, I was promoted to an assignment editor. And then, so I'll say within 2 years, I had achieved a managerial position, and I was the lead gen manager, and I was managing 4 different teams based in different parts of the world. And so in a relatively short amount of time, I was able to climb up that ladder. But when I got to that point where I was now, this is really good to be part of the editorial team. I'm now part of, the people that actually, make the stories happen. And being the lead gen, what it is you're working with these different contractors who go out and they find the stories. Now, you cannot publish any stories without those leads, right? So we were at the beginning of the entire process. And so it was a very critical role. And it made me feel really important. And I remember struggling to have balance in my life at that point. It was very stressful because the team, myself and the team, we had to create over 1,000 leads each week for the various outlets.
Whoa.
So lots of pressure. And when you're working with teams in different parts of the world, across different time zones, some as far as 12 hours ahead of me at the time, I kind of had to be available even in the middle of the night sometimes, because if I knew the teams were already working, I needed to make sure they're not encountering any issues that will that will impact the team that now comes on, later on, 12 hours later. So it was a lot. It was a lot. It was more. Yes. And, and when I looked at it, I would say, I've achieved this great position in under 2 years. And I'm getting all of these, I'm receiving a lot of praise from different people within the company. You're doing so well and all of this stuff. And if someone on the outside looking in would have thought, oh, this is great. Money was good and all of that. But it was draining me because at the time, my children were young, very young. I mean, at the time, they were maybe 6 and 7 or so. So very young. And it just took a toll on me. And I didn't stay in that position very long. Within a year, I'd probably say about 9 or 10 months, I ended up asking to get a lower ranking. Excuse me.
The responsibility, eh?
The responsibility was a lot. And so the more that I received then just came at too much of an expense for me. And I wonder if there are any viewers or listeners who can relate to that. When you think that, if I achieve a certain level, it's going to be smooth sailing. But the responsibilities that sometimes come when you're operating at that level can really, they can take a toll.
They can take a toll. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that's one of the reasons why I had to I stepped down, number one. And then number two, eventually some years later, I just I left the entire journalism world altogether because of, the news. And as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of negativity in the news because that's just the nature of stories that are reported, right? The negative things that happen. And it was just getting a bit much for me. And so I just, at some point said, no, I can't even be a part of this world anymore. And I shifted to something else. But it just goes to show that sometimes what more requires is too costly on us. It's too costly.
That's a very good point. I was going to share just a story, and I don't know this person personally, but someone in the online business world space said very much the same thing. And she had attained a level that some people would be like, oh, wow, like, my gosh, look how many subscribers you have. Look how many people in your course you have and the views, and you're really an influencer. People don't really say influencer nowadays. They say content creator, but she was quite a big content creator. And she got to a point where I was like, I don't even know myself anymore. So she actually stepped down and shut down her business for like a year. So anyway, I can very much see that. What is the cost of you getting more? That's a very good question. What is the cost?
Yeah, is it worth it? Is it
Is it
worth
worth
it
it?
to achieve it? So I think we have to really look at what success or what abundance looks like on an individual level, because you're going to keep chasing after things. Because even as you're talking about the content creator, oh, everybody wants to, if I hit this number of followers, if I hit this, but until I get there, I just have the 1,000 or the 5,000 or the 10,000. But when you really look at it, that's an achievement. That's something to be grateful for. So if we continue to chase after, we're not even going to stop to smell the roses and appreciate.
Exactly. And that's why you have to know how to be content in any situation. Because if you think, if it's this idea, this attitude, I'll be happy when, that's where you get a little bit of, you may run into some trouble. I'll be happy when. You can be happy now. You can be content now, right? You don't have to wait for something to work out or something that you're going to accomplish or achieve. You can be happy now.
You can be happy now. And now, who tells us? I mean, here's another example from the Bible of somebody who we know who was the wealthiest man alive at the time. I don't know how he would compare to some of the billionaires that we have today. But at the time, he was the wealthiest man on earth. He was the wisest man. He was highly honored. And we're talking about no one else other than King Solomon, right?
That's right.
And he had all these women. He had 700 wives, 300 concubines. And you have to think to yourself, by the time you get to wife number 5, by the time you get to wife number 2, it's like, okay, where is this wisdom coming into play here? Because the fact that you keep getting more and more and more wives, it's telling you that you're never going to be satisfied.
Yeah, I
That
know.
one more woman is not going to
How many
satisfy
women do you
you.
need? How many women do you need?
And did he even know all of their names? How do you know the names of 1,000 women? Do you even know how many children you have? I mean, like, it's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's absolutely.
Yeah. So he definitely lacked for nothing. He had everything, at his fingertips. And he, at the end of life, really, with the end of in the book of Ecclesiastics, he's talking about, all his vanity, money is wealth is vanity, all of these things he mentions that are meaningless, things that we would place a lot of value on in this day and age, and that we would think are things to say, oh yeah, that, like, wisdom, that has a lot of that has a lot of value. But he was saying, no, all of this is meaningless. And he said, at the end of the day, what it boils down to is fear God and keep his commandments. And so that's interesting that somebody who has everything would say that.
Yeah.
What do
After
you think
all
about
that
that?
money, all the variety of women, at the end of the day, it's about to fear God and keep his commandments.
Mm-hmm.
It is vanity.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All of it is
Interesting.
Yeah. So when I think about him and I think about some of the things that I may be chasing after, it's a good reminder to keep things in perspective. Keep things in perspective and really understand and have the discipline of being contented. And I think this is a good time where we can now go into, since we've talked about what contentment is, we've discussed the difference between contentment and complacency, and we know what the Bible says about being content. The question now becomes, how do we become contented?
Mm-hmm. So you want to go through a few? I can go through a few as well.
Yeah, you want to start?
Sure. So we have to know, and Paul talked about this, that contentment is an attitude. It's a mindset that you're going to have regardless of what's happening around you. And
Yeah.
that often takes practice. It doesn't always come easy. That you're going to be contented even when you're in the lowest time of your life. So, contentment is an attitude. Another one is not comparing yourself with others. And we talked about this already, where if you're on social media and you say, oh my gosh, this person, they had this beautiful family trip. Oh my goodness, I haven't been on a trip in years. And oh, I'm starting to feel like unsatisfied with my life now.
Mm-hmm.
Not comparing yourself with others is important.
Yeah.
Also, if you find you're really having a hard time, what you can do is begin to journal and take
Mm-hmm.
stock of the things that you are grateful for on a regular basis. Practicing gratitude promotes positive feelings. So you write down, you go through and you write down what you are grateful for. There's always something to be grateful for. And you just reflect and meditate on that because that will help you feel better.
Yeah, and I would say that people should do this on a daily basis. I
Yeah.
think at the end of each day, or maybe at the beginning of the day, whenever you journal, but just listing the things that you're grateful for and what's going well and in your life, what, and even finding the gratitude in the unpleasant things of life.
Yeah,
So,
because it's
okay,
very good
maybe,
lessons to be to be learned. Yeah.
yeah, because maybe, okay, let's just say you got pulled over, right? And nobody likes that. That's not fun. But then maybe you were given a warning instead of getting a ticket. Or maybe even if you got a ticket, excuse me, you got a ticket, you have the money to pay for the ticket. You don't like to that you have to pay for the ticket, but you have the means to do so. So just those kind of things, just finding little pieces of joy and gratitude, even in the not so nice things of life, can go a long way in helping you be contented.
There was a time when I did that religiously, journal what I was grateful for. I
Mm,
don't journal it every single day. I do journal on other things, but not always like necessarily things I'm grateful for. But what I do every night with the kids and my husband is we go around and we talk about what is our blessing of the day.
yeah.
What is our blessing of the day? And even if it's a bit late and the kids will say, aren't we doing our blessings? We've
Oh,
been doing it now for
talk
almost
about the
4 years.
kids.
Yeah, almost
Yeah.
4 years. And there's always something that we can say that we are blessed. Like, what are we happy for about today?
Hmm.
It's a good
Yeah,
practice.
that's definitely a good practice. I like that practice. And it's we haven't talked about this, but that's something I also do with my kids. Is in the evenings we talk about, what we liked about the day, what was special about your day. And it's true. Sometimes I'm so tired, Mathisa, and I just want to go to bed. And the kids will be like, "Oh, are we doing our gratitude?" And it's like, oh, you know.
It's routine for
But
them. Yeah, it's good. And it's good that it's a
yeah,
routine, right? And there are some days
yeah.
I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, I'm grateful for this. It
Sometimes you
just
have to search
I have to
really
search
hard
a
to
little bit.
find.
I have to
Yeah.
search a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah. So those have been some really good ones that you mentioned, Mathisa. I will add on that we need to realize that I think we have to realize who we are and recognize that, going talking specifically to the blessings, that there are a lot of people who are less fortunate than we are, and there's some people out there who would love to live the lives that we're living now.
It's true.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and when you really put that into perspective, you will see that there are many things that we gloss over, and just it's just because we're used to living our lives, we're used to something being the norm for us. It's something that somebody else would wish they could have. And a good way to realize that is when you volunteer, spend time helping others, whether it's a soup kitchen, whether it's feeding people, or uh, visiting people, the unhoused people, or whatever your thing is when it comes to volunteering or helping the community. You speak to people, talk to people, and you realize where they are in life, and you sometimes can tell that, wait a minute, like, let me look at my life and be appreciative of some of these things that I've been taking for granted.
Yeah, exactly. We're taking them for granted. We're making ourselves miserable in the process.
Yes. Hmm. And then another one is having a better relationship with ourselves and really looking into develop ourselves. So personal development is one of those things that helps us accept ourselves, love on ourselves, and be okay and even happy with who we are.
Hmm.
Embrace the unique gifts and characteristics that God has given to us. Meditate on what God says about us, learn about ourselves. You know, sometimes we don't really take the time to understand who we are and learn ourselves, find out what drives us, what makes us feel fulfilled, and discover and understand our purpose. And it's not even, we don't just stop at embracing our gifts. It's about using them too. And we get a lot of joy when we use our gifts because God has designed it in a way that whatever He's given us as gifts and talents, when we share those gifts with the world, we get it blesses us as well. So we're not just blessing others, we're blessing ourselves as well in the process.
That's right.
Okay, and then another one is being true to who you are. So this is another big one, Matisa. Being true to who you are. Because, again, we live in a world that is often telling us we need to be like this, we need to be like that, we need to this and that. If we haven't lost those 10 pounds, then we need to do this. So it's constantly telling us what we should look like, what we should be, and all of that. But when we're able to look at our lives and love who we are, appreciate who we are, and stay true to that and really say, okay, I know the world says I need to achieve this, that, and the other to be successful or to be happy. But my definition of happiness and joy and contentment, it looks different. And I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to look like somebody else's. Like you talked about earlier, how that person was asking you, oh, I thought you would have two cars. No, you have
Yeah.
one and you're good with one.
Yeah, that's all we need for the time being. If it comes to a point where we need to, because maybe, situation has changed, maybe we're living in a different area, then okay. But for now, one is good.
One is good. Yeah. So, along with that, just comes also being honest with ourselves about the root of the desires that we have. So, when we're talking about more, why do we want more? Is it because we want to keep up with the Joneses, or is it because there's something else that is driving that is, for that's serving a function? So there's a healthy relationship that we have with our desires, and we want to achieve this so that you can do A, B, C, D, and E. You want to achieve a certain level of financial freedom so that you can have more time to spend with your family. You have better control of your schedule and your time. You can do more volunteer work. You can, so when you're able to look at the root of those desires, you can very easily decipher what is um, healthy desires, so what's being fueled by a healthy desire and what's not being fueled by a healthy one.
Desire. Yeah. Yeah. And do we just want to wrap up with maybe one or two more?
Yeah, sure.
So, one thing that we can do is manage stress in healthy ways. So, when we are going through those times in our lives where it is, a little bit hairy, scary, and things are coming at us and stress levels are rising, we
Mm-hmm.
know how to manage that stress in a way that's it's not going to take us over. Because when we're in a really stressed state, we're not happy. It doesn't
No.
feel good. Physically doesn't feel good. And also mentally, we're clouded. So manage stress in healthy ways. And then
Yeah.
finally, we need to live more in the present and stop wishing that we can correct past mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Mistakes are learning opportunities and we're not perfect. Um, so we should not really be focusing on what we should have done or our regrets in life. Let's
And
focus
we
on
can't change them.
We can't
Yeah,
change them. They're
we can.
done. It's
Yeah.
done. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But that was a great
Yes,
conversation.
I think so. I think we were able to iron out some of the misconceptions maybe that we had, or about what contentment really means. I know that was helpful for me to really fine tune what contentment is and how to achieve it. So
Right.
I'm curious about if our listeners have other things, other ways that they achieve contentment. What is your relationship with contentment? Let us know. What do you think?
Let us know, please. We are going to see every comment. And
Mm.
if you wanted to maybe not have a public comment, but you wanted to share some of your perspectives, reach out to us on abundance1010.com. There is a way where you can contact us and we will see your message, your email. Okay? And
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 yeah,
I'll do my
you do your
end.
and first, and I'll do my and afterwards.
Anyone who has been listening to us knows what I'm going to say. If you have been blessed by this conversation, please share it with someone. We want to have a community of women who want to live abundant lives. So, what we can do, you can help us with that by sharing this podcast with someone who you know will enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that, Matisa. So, the last thing that I will say is if you are listening to this podcast or watching it, we are accepting guest hosts. So please reach out to us. Let us know if you'd like to be on the podcast. Would love to talk and find out what abundance means to you. Talk to, and we can talk about contentment, or how you, or just sharing your story. So
Please reach out.
reach out
Reach
to us.
out.
Would love to have you on.
So, and I have to say, now that we're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe,
There we
so that
go.
more people can discover this podcast.
Yeah, and turn on your notifications so
Turn them
that you
on.
can be informed each time that we upload a new podcast episode. You won't miss out. So do that, and yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that sentence, it ended mid-sentence, but it's all good, because let me tell you something, viewers. We are not rehearsed. We don't rehearse our conversations. We just go with the flow. So sometimes that sentence will end mid-sentence and you can fill in the rest.
My hair is doing this thing today. I don't know what's wrong with this lock, but it's doing doing this thing. So sorry. I've been trying to lay it down a little bit, but that's just what I'm doing. I don't know. It has a mind of its own. What's going on?
That lock is not contented being
It's not
part of the others. It wants to stand out. Let it stand out.
No, come on. Be content with the other logs. Come on here.
Oh,
Anyway, so thank you so much for hanging out with us. We truly appreciate it. And we will see you in our next episode.
Yep. Take care for now.